Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's WNBA betting podcast presented by BetMGM. And this is our opening day best bets episode for Tuesday, May 14th. I'm your host, Maria Marino. Couldn't be more excited to be back with our expert, Jim Turvey. Jim, I cannot believe it. Opening day is already here.
Oh man, it does go. It goes from going so slow, like the off season. The players don't get much of an off season, but for us W fans, we're like, it's like, oh man, like just come back, and then suddenly the Final Four happens, and then the draft, and then training camp, and then opening day is here. So it's really exciting. I cannot wait to get the season underway. It flew. I feel like we were just talking about Final Four stuff, and
Right.
Here we are now at the start of the season. So I can't wait.
It's especially a whirlwind for the rookies who, as you just alluded to, finished their college season like a month ago. Went straight to the draft a week after March Madness wrapped up. And then final rosters coming out on Monday. We pretty much know who's in, who's out. But we have 4 games on Tuesday, opening day. We'll run through each of them, even if we don't have specific picks. But why don't we start here? Jim, you give me your best bets for Tuesday the 14th.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go 1 spread and 2 player props. The spread is, drumroll, the Connecticut Sun against Caitlin Clark's Indiana Fever. We'll definitely be talking about that game. I'm going to be fading the Fever in their first game of the season. My 2 player props, I've got Brittany Sykes, points, rebounds, and assists over, as well as Asia Wilson rebounds over as well. Both those lines are not out, but we'll kind of talk through the numbers I'd be eyeing there.
Yes, I have to say I am leaning the same way you are with the Sun against the Fever, but we'll get into that in just a moment. We're going to start with the very first game on the slate, which is the Liberty favored by 12.5 at Washington. This is a 7:00 Eastern tip. And, you talked about liking Brittany Sykes, points, rebounds, and assists. So why don't we start with that, Cap?
Yeah, Brittany Sykes is a player who last year, so the Washington Mystics, just to kind of set the scene a little bit. So they were around bottom tier playoff team last year, but that's because they had a lot of injuries during the season. They had Elena Deladon miss a lot of time. Shakira Austin missed a lot of time. Even Ariel Atkins missed some time. This year, they are without Elena Deladon for the full season. They're without Natasha Cloud, who was really great for them. She's now off in Phoenix. Now, Shakira Austin has returned. Ariel Atkins has returned. But Brittany Sykes is the one who I'm really keeping an eye on usage-wise. There was a stretch. It was most of July and into a little bit of August last year when the Mystics were without a few players. And it was Sykes and Cloud, and they were getting all the usage. And Sykes was averaging about 20 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists a game. Now, her season totals were much less than that, and her season totals were even career highs. So I think this is the exact type of spot. We don't have an exact number out, but what I like to do is kind of look at players, especially early in the season, who are going to get these usage jumps. And with Elena Deladon officially, not playing, we talked a little bit about that whole situation in the Eastern Conference preview. Sykes is a player who's going to soak up a ton of that usage. So we don't have a number for this. I would guess it's going to come out in like the 20, 21.5, 22.5 maybe range. We'll see how sharp they are on this, but I like this up to, almost into the high 20s. So I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of room for what I have projected versus what the books are going to release. So keep an eye on that. But I really like Sykes to be a player whose point totals are going to be really high. We've got if you want to look at the Action app, we've got a hot takes or bold predictions. I think maybe we're calling it bold predictions article out. And one of my bold predictions was Brittany Sykes to finish in the top 5 in scoring this season. I think there's a chance that she averages about 20 a season and is up there with those names like Brianna Stewart, Asia Wilson, Nafisa Collier, Arike Agumbawale. I think she might be in that tier of scoring this year. I really think she's an outstanding player who's going to have a ton of usage on not an amazing Mystics team, but a team that I think is going to have a little bit of spunk and be a fun team to watch all year.
I'm glad you mentioned our Eastern Conference betting preview. If you haven't gotten a chance to check that out, definitely do so, as well as our Western Conference betting preview. And that's going to give you a lot more background as to what happened in the off season, how these teams are really different from this season to the season before. So a solid sort of introduction to where things stand as opposed to just our best bets for opening day. And as far as the spread is concerned, you're not technically betting this, but you lean perhaps the Mystics to cover the double-digit spread.
Yeah, I do. It's not that I'm necessarily low on the Liberty, but I do think that there's, this is a big spread. It opened at 13.5. It moved to 12.5. Again, it wouldn't be a best bet, but I do like the Mystics side here. The Mystics are a team that, they lost a big name player in Elena Deladon. They lost a big name player in Natasha Cloud, but I think there's still really a lot to like here, to be honest. They're projected around the Sky and the Sparks level of win totals. I think that's not an accurate read on this team. I think they're a tier above those two teams. Maybe not quite on the tier with like the Dream and the Fever in that battling for the last playoff spot. But I think if things break right for Washington, they really could be battling, at least down the stretch. Maybe they fade in the last couple games and they don't quite make the playoffs. But I think this team is closer to respectable than I think the market has them right now. So I'm going to be likely on the Mystics side of things. You and I we'll talk through this dilemma a little bit later, but injury reports haven't been, especially early in the season, they're a little bit tough to find. So right. I want to make sure everyone's in the lineup for Washington, a team that, potentially could be in a rebuild mode. So you don't want to see any like late scratches, stuff like that. So let's see the full lineups. I don't think this number is going to move a ton. I definitely would lean towards Washington though. If we get to 12.5 and we see that both teams are fully starting everyone that we anticipate.
And to be fair, I think going into an opening day situation for the WNBA is a little more challenging from a betting perspective than, say, the NBA. Most of these teams have had one, maybe two preseason games. You have, at times, international players, coming late to training camp. You're waiting to see what the roster is going to look like because there is a hard salary cap, and that's why these roster cuts, are so important to follow, as a lot of the preseason action we saw, for instance, with the Liberty, bringing it back to the Liberty for a second, like so many players got minutes in those games because it seemed like Sandy Brandello was just trying to figure out, okay, how am I going to solidify my bench? And she's just like looking at all these different combinations. And in that way, I feel like the Liberty just really haven't had a lot of normalcy to their preseason. They had one preseason game where they lost by like 50 points to the Sky. And again, it's really just because they're trying to figure out, who's making the team, what do they have in front of them? But still, it was pretty nuts. And then another preseason game, they ended up beating the Connecticut Sun by 3. So I'm just not 100% sure what to expect. I can tell you last opening day for the Liberty, they were upset by the Mystics. Granted, totally different team. The Mystics were much more talented at that time. The Liberty, I think we're still trying to find some continuity with their stars. But one other thing I want to mention, there was a report that the Liberty are not flying charter for this game or Thursday against the Indiana Fever. So keep an eye out for these reports. Each matchup we go through, there's going to be some teams that are flying charter and some teams that are not. We all were a little taken aback when the W announced, hey, we're going to start having everybody flying charter. And as great a piece of news as that is, clearly it's not been fully fleshed out and fully coordinated just yet. So I don't know whether they're going to be pissed that they're not flying charter and they're going to take that out on the Mystics, or if this is going to be, a bit more of a disadvantage from a travel standpoint. So that being said, one of the teams that is flying charter, I'm sure you can guess, is the Indiana Fever, and they are against the Sun at 7:30 Eastern on Tuesday. Sun, as you mentioned, Jim, are favored by 5.5. Now, I know this is one of your best bets, and I feel like I've been seeing this line now for a couple of weeks, and it definitely stood out to me as like, ooh, I'm probably going to bet Connecticut to cover here opening day, because it just seems like, all right, here we go. We got the team with not only like a rookie like leading them, but one of the most highly anticipated rookies, all the buzz. And I could just see a team with vets like Alyssa Thomas and Wnba just not caring, and Caitlin Clark having a little bit of a welcome to the W moment. I have to say, though, I feel a little bit better about the Fever just based on the way that they attack the preseason. I talked about how the Liberty, like, they haven't seemed like their preseason games you could really glean a whole lot. The Fever were treating their preseason games like real games, and they were the players that are probably going to be playing heavy minutes were playing a lot, and both games were close. One was a 3-point loss to Dallas, and the other was a 3-point win against the Dream. So close games, everybody playing, and I feel like they're showing that they're serious about this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it well when like the welcome to the WNBA moment. I really do think, I don't think schedule makers are like known comedians, but I did chuckle a little bit that we got Caitlin Clark. They're going to be rolling out every red carpet, every spotlight, the entire stage is going to be Caitlin Clark on Tuesday. Which team do we know has been putting the hashtag disrespect CT, hashtag onto like every piece of media they've had for the last half decade? It's Connecticut. You don't think they're going to take it personally that they now have to play second fiddle to a rookie in her first professional game? I mean, come on. You almost couldn't draw it up for like a funnier opponent for Caitlin to have in game one than the Sun. I absolutely think that they are going to be going after Caitlin. Like, I also lean towards Caitlin's under on points here. The only reason I didn't give it as a best bet here, and part of why this is a best bet at this number, and it'll be my singular best bet if Kelsey Mitchell does not play. She's questionable right now. Again, these injury reports are a little tricky, especially early in the season, when you don't know if certain players, were just not playing because it was preseason or because there's really something there. She didn't play in the second preseason game, and their coach said she's questionable heading into tomorrow's game. That could be a little bit of gamesmanship as well. So we'll have to see on that. But even if Kelsey Mitchell plays, I am on the Connecticut side of things here. I wrote up the preview for this game. I talked a little bit about how, the Sun, they did lose from last year. Tiffany Hayes retired. Natisha Heidemann is in Minnesota, but they've got a new revamped backcourt. I think, in the long run, I don't like this backcourt quite as much. However, on the flip side of that, Brianna Jones is back, quietly one of the best players in the league. And I think it's going to take a lot of the burden off of Alyssa Thomas to do everything, especially scoring wise. Brianna Jones, when she's healthy, by some of the advanced stats, VORPs and warps and all that stuff out there, one of the genuinely best players in the W, one of the most efficient players. So having that type of efficiency in the lineup next to an Alyssa Thomas, who's such a creator, but maybe not always at the most efficient levels, it's such a good interchange of play. So as long as this Sun team is rolling out, those two plus DeWanna Bonner in the front court, they're an incredibly skilled team. And I just think that this number is a little bit short for a Sun team at home on opening night. I think that they're more like 4 to 5, maybe even 6 points better than the Fever. And then you add in home court, you get to like 7.5, 8.5 on a theoretical spread that I would have this game. And that's even before Kelsey Mitchell. So I'm definitely on the Connecticut side of things. I think that the Caitlin Clark points under could be a look, but I do want to see if Kelsey Mitchell plays, because if she doesn't play, then that's obviously going to mean more usage for Caitlin.
Right. And that is one area, unfortunately, like I talked about how the Fever really took preseason very seriously, but we did not see Kelsey Mitchell. And so we haven't seen an iteration of this team with her there. But I do love the idea of the Clark points under, just because we have seen that while Caitlin Clark can score the basketball, she is able to dish the basketball with great precision, great success. We saw in both preseason games, Nalissa Smith, got going, and she praised Caitlin for like, hey, you're opening things up for us. You're able to find your teammates. So I could see Caitlin having more success early this season as a facilitator than a scorer. And Alyssa Thomas too is another one that I'm curious to watch. I'm, full disclosure, first game, we don't have a lot of data here, but I'm curious because she's one of those players that, she can score, but she can also be more intent on just, passing the basketball and getting rebounds and filling up the box score in other ways. But she is a very physical player. She's one of the best defensive players in the W. And so while this Fever team is super feisty, like they're going to have their hands full.
Yeah, they absolutely will. And you brought up a good point about Alyssa Thomas filling up the stat sheet. I'm trying to keep an eye on just how much she's going to fill it up this year with Brianna Jones back. I do think there's a chance that her rebounds, I want to see this number come out as well. I might be looking at rebounds under only because she collected so many last year without Brianna Jones. But she's also Alyssa Thomas. I don't know if I entirely, especially in a game like this where we both think the Sun are going to come out fired up. That's again going to be more of a lean for me than a best bet. I want to see that number first.
Okay, so we have 2 more opening day games we want to touch on. I want to start with the other one where you have a best bet, Jim. So let's talk Mercury at Aces. Aces laying 13.5, and this is a 10 o'clock Eastern tip. A little tricky here. We haven't seen a ton of information about Brittany Griner. She was seen in a walking boot and using a scooter to get around not that long ago. Didn't play in the last preseason game. I'm personally not expecting her to play, but we'll have to wait, for the official injury report. And even so, it's weird because, you see a line like 13.5 and it's definitely a hesitation, at least for me. But this is the Aces we're talking about, and they did tend to blow out opponents quite a bit last season. The other question, though, is Chelsea Gray. She was most recently questionable, still kind of working her way back from the injury that she had sustained during the finals last season. So tell me if you agree. As far as the spread, you're going to have to see if Chelsea is playing it, even if she is, I don't know, maybe they'll say it's not worth it if BG is out, but we haven't seen Chelsea play at all this preseason.
Yeah, you make a great point on both fronts. I lean towards both players likely not playing in this game. Mm-hmm. Again, this is not information because unfortunately we don't have the perfect information right now. We're kind of working with, assumptions. You see someone like BG in the boot, probably not going to be back 2 days later, even if it's preventative. If it's that in need of preventing, then you're probably not going to play in game 1. I'm with you on the 13.5 being a little bit heavy, but I do like the Aces side here. And one way that we were able to play them last year is a derivative market. It's first half. Aces first half was an absolute wagon last year, in part because they are so much better than a lot of the teams, or they were, especially last year, that they would get out to these big leads and they could kind of hit the cruise control down the stretch, still win by about 13, 14, 15, which is closer to the spread. But a lot of those first halves, they were up 13, 14, 15, and then it was kind of just hit the coast down the stretch. So there's a minus 7.5 in the market right now. I'm going to be on that Aces first half. I really like that one. The best bet for this game was Asia Wilson's rebounds. That is due in part to Brittany Griner being out. If she's out, it's like a hammer spot, with the only worry being that it could be a blowout in which, she doesn't play the fourth quarter. I'm guessing her number is going to be at about 9.5. That's what she averaged last year. But this Mercury front court is paper thin, regardless of BG playing or not. And BG actually isn't the best rebounder of all time. For a player who, anyone looks at Brittany Griner like, oh, must get tons and tons of rebounds. Not quite as many as you would imagine. So that's been a worry for me all year, is how is Phoenix going to rebound? And in this matchup against, arguably the best rebounder in the league in Asia Wilson, I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
I have to say, this is going to be such a stacked opening day with all these games. And I'm just so curious to really see the real action, who's in and who's out. The teams are finalized. I think we're going to glean so much just from this opening day slate that we're going to be able to then turn around and provide a lot more context for future best bets episodes. And by the way, we have new episodes every Tuesday and Friday. So we'll be back Friday with more best bets for that night and potentially looking ahead to the weekend. And the other 10 o'clock Eastern tip on opening night is the Lynx at Storm. Seattle, the home favorites, laying like 8.5. We don't have official plays for this, but I will remind anyone in case you missed our Western Conference preview. Firstly, Jim is overall quite high on the Storm as a whole this season and, their potential. We also liked the Lynx to go over their win total of 16.5 and to make the playoffs. By the way, just FYI, the Lynx are in fact, well, I shouldn't say in fact, are reportedly flying charter to Seattle. So that is the other team on opening night that is traveling charter from the reports that I've been seeing online. So they'll be probably super happy and comfortable on their way. And this, I think, is just going to be a great game because they're loaded. Both teams are loaded with talent and some of the biggest stars in the league. But any other thoughts on this, Jim, before we move on?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. These are two teams that I think both of us are very high on. I probably I feel like I might be the highest person out there on the Storm. To go back to that bold predictions take, my bold predictions. You haven't seen this yet, and I know you'll push against it a little bit here, but my kind of vague bold prediction was that the Storm will have a better season than the Liberty. Now, I didn't define it. I didn't say like win more regular season games. I didn't say get further in the playoffs. So I kind of like left it intentionally open-ended. But I just think that this team fits so well. I really love the way it comes together. I think the team theoretically fits together a little bit better even than the Liberty. So, it's a bold take. It's more in relation to how the market sees them. The market does see the Aces and Liberty very much as 1 and 2 with the Storm a noticeable third. I think it should be more like 3 teams in that top tier. So it's kind of, a take against the market more than anything. But yeah, to your point, these are 2 teams I'm really high on. I also didn't have any player prop stuff here. Nothing really popped to me. Jewel Lloyd, I'll be interested to see her scoring props. I think they'll be too smart to hang exactly what she averaged last year. She's obviously going to have a lot more people looking to score around her. I think they'll be able to sniff that out. Maybe her assists. This is going to be one where I'm going to have to read what the market gives because I think it'll be so obvious that there won't be, kind of hidden stuff where like, I think the Sykes PRA is a little bit more hidden. I think Asia's rebounds are a little bit more hidden. Whereas with these 2 teams, I think they'll know a little bit better. So I'm going to just read and react to what the books post. And obviously for that, follow in the app, Maria and myself. Hopefully we can get Maria on some player props, get some other first half cashes like on the men's side.
Well, yes. And just as a disclaimer for myself, I think I got more and more active, tracking my picks in the app in the latter half of last season. And I will be getting there again. I'm a little more selective. I think for this opening day, like I said, I'm personally feeling like I need to see a little more before I feel like I just have a full like grasp of what's going on. So that's why I'll be a little scarce in the app for this week, but definitely looking to expand that as we go. And before we do wrap up this episode, I do want to have a little bonus bet, if you will, looking ahead to Wednesday, just because this was a game that sort of jumped out for the both of us, and it's the Chicago Sky visiting the Wings. And the Wings you can find at like minus 11.5 or even minus 12. And we are both, Jim, sort of leaning Sky here. I think this number just at first glance feels a little high for a team that I just don't know if they're there yet. Like, I don't know if they should be hanging 12 really on anyone yet. And then the Chicago Sky have been very, very spunky, we'll call them, this offseason. And like I said, it was only a preseason game, but still to hang 100 on the Liberty and beat them by like 50 points, it's still really jarring. And it, again, just goes to show that Teresa Weatherspoon is extremely competitive. She's trying to be, a team that you don't want to sleep on. And they're not trying to mess around. So I don't know. I could kind of see, I could see the Sky keeping this a little close and maybe catching the Wings off guard for their first game of the regular season.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think you distilled it really well when you said, I don't know if this Wings team should be hanging 12 right now, because I do think this is a team without their best player in Satu Sabli right now. I think a lot of people would think maybe Enrique Gunbowale is the best player. I think Enrique has that ceiling to be the best player, but last season I thought Satu was the best player on the Wings. She's going to be out to the Olympic break. I'm intrigued by Dallas in the long run because I think they're going to be giving some of their younger players some minutes here to start the season. But that's the exact like that the younger players getting minutes is great for their long run. But the younger players are the types that Chicago can hang against and showed against New York. Like if you're playing some younger minutes, some younger players trying to get them minutes and like acclimate them to the W, you're not going to be running the Sky off the court by 20. Like Teaspoon has already shown that she's got that team that can hang at least with that tier of W player. Like maybe like if this was Aces Sky, I don't think I'd be looking to be on the Sky side of things. I'd want to at least see a couple games, see how they look. But the preseason can tell you how your roster can play against, not the top tier in the W, just to be honest about it. And they definitely showed themselves very, very capable on that front. And so if this Wings team isn't going to be able to throw, 40 minutes of top tier talent, they're going to be working in some rookies and stuff like that. I think this is the perfect type of game for this guy to hang around a little bit. And they don't have to win. They just have to, be within 10, 11, 12 points, even with that one number. So, yeah, I think I'm definitely with you on the Sky side of things as we kind of look to the week out or the couple days out.
Couple of side notes that everyone should be aware of. Reportedly, the Sky will not be flying charter. If you're wondering about Camila Cardoso, who is a high-profile rookie that was drafted, she's injured, so she's going to be out for a few weeks. I don't think that affects the Sky too much because I think they actually do have enough depth. An underrated player like Bree Turner, I feel like can be very effective for them. Angel Reese, I actually thought was pretty effective given the circumstances for what we've seen in preseason, like still able to pull down a lot of rebounds. So I think that'll be exciting. And then I also think they are generally smaller, but they might be able to take advantage in the pace department against bigs like Tierra McCowan and Kalani Brown, who are more traditional. I mean, they're dominant bigs, but I'm curious how that matchup plays out, and if the Sky can sort of make it a faster paced game where they're running and beating them down the floor in transition, and actually able to have success that way. So that is another little bonus lean for you here on our Buckets WNBA opening day best bets episode. It's all happening, and there's more where this came from, because on Tuesday we will also have a show on Action Network's YouTube channel and our Action app called Action Island. We're going to dive really, really deep into the Fever Sun matchup. So for more prop plays, for a little bit more in depth on the spread and everything in between, make sure you check that out. Thanks for listening to Buckets presented by BetMGM. Once again, I'm Maria Marino along with Jim Turvey. Jim, it's been a blast. Thanks, dude.
Yes. See you soon.
And by the way, once again, we'll be back Friday with more best bets. Let's get buckets.